You've been told that women are the prize, that men chase, compete, and prove themselves for access. But that's not actually how the game works. The reality is far less obvious and far more uncomfortable to admit. Because when you strip away appearances and look at how value is actually created and exchanged, a different picture emerges. Men are not the seekers, men are the source. It's easy to understand why this confusion exists. There are women today, especially young, highly attractive ones, who receive an overwhelming amount of attention. Every day, they accumulate validation at a scale that would have been unimaginable in any previous era. Thousands, sometimes millions, of men signaling desire, approval, and willingness. From the outside, it looks like power. It feels like scarcity. It gives the impression that they are the prize in a marketplace filled with eager buyers. And in a limited sense, that perception holds. When compared to the average man who receives little attention and competes for visibility, a highly desirable woman appears rare, elevated, and valuable. But that comparison is flawed because it is not measuring equals. And once you correct that comparison, the entire narrative begins to collapse. To understand what's really happening, you have to step out of the illusion created by attention and look at the structure underneath it. Because attention is not the same as value, it's only a signal of demand. And demand, especially in the modern world, can be distorted. Consider what's happening at scale. There are women today receiving more validation in a single day than historical figures received in a lifetime. Every like, every follow, every dollar spent is a man expressing interest. Over time, this creates a powerful psychological effect. When millions of people appear to want access to you, it's natural to conclude that you are rare, that you are exceptional, that you are the prize. From that perspective, the dynamic looks obvious. There are countless men competing and one woman selecting. That feels like a seller's market. She sets the standards. She defines the terms. She filters the options. And the man who wins gains access to her. On the surface, it looks like victory. But look closer at what's actually being exchanged. What is it that those men are offering? Attention, time, money, effort, resources, status, commitment. And what is she offering in return? Beauty, presence, companionship, intimacy, things that are valuable, yes, but fundamentally consumable. They are experienced, not produced. They are appreciated, not multiplied. This is where the metaphor begins to clarify. A highly attractive woman can be compared to a diamond. She is visually striking. She is desired. She commands attention. She can be expensive to access. People compete for her. They admire her from different angles, evaluating her qualities, her appearance, her uniqueness. There is a reason people use language like a perfect 10. The association is not accidental. Diamonds are captivating. They are status symbols. They are objects people will invest significant resources to acquire, and once acquired, they are displayed, protected, and valued for what they represent. But here is the critical mistake, comparing that diamond to the average man. Of course, the diamond looks more valuable in that comparison. Of course, it stands out. Of course, it dominates the exchange. But that's not a fair comparison. That's comparing a top-tier outcome to a baseline participant. The correct comparison is not between a top-tier woman and an average man. It's between a top-tier woman and a top-tier man. And when you make that adjustment, everything changes. A top-tier man is not defined by how much attention he receives. He is defined by what he can produce, generate, and sustain over time. His value is not based on immediate perception, it's based on output, on capability, on results. He creates businesses. He builds systems. He generates income. He solves problems. He organizes resources. He produces value that extends beyond himself. And importantly, that value compounds. It grows. It multiplies. This is not the same category as a diamond because a diamond, no matter how beautiful, does not produce more diamonds. It does not generate additional value on its own. It can be bought, sold, admired, but it does not create. A top tier man, on the other hand, is a source. He is closer to a diamond mine. And the difference between a diamond and a diamond mine is not small, it is fundamental. One is an object of value, the other is the origin of value. One is finite, the other is generative. Think about what it actually means to be able to acquire something expensive. If a man can afford a diamond, it means he already possesses or controls more value than the diamond itself represents. That is the only way the transaction can occur. The buyer must exceed the value of the thing being purchased. And not only can he acquire one, he can often acquire many, which further exposes the imbalance. Because while a diamond is singular, the source that produces wealth can replicate that outcome repeatedly. This is why the surface level perception is misleading. What looks like power being desired by many is not the same as actual leverage, because those same men who are offering attention and resources are also the ones generating the system that makes that exchange possible in the first place. At scale, men disproportionately build, produce, and expand the structures that create economic value. And that value is then redistributed, spent, and consumed often by the very individuals who appear on the surface to be the prize. So when you shift your lens from attention to production, from appearance to output, from immediate perception to long-term value, the hierarchy begins to invert. The diamond is still beautiful, it is still desirable, it still has value, but it is not the source. And once you see that distinction clearly, the entire dynamic starts to make a lot more sense. Now, once you understand the difference between a diamond and a diamond mine, the next step is to confront why this confusion persists so strongly. Because if the distinction is so clear structurally, why does it feel so unclear socially? The answer lies in perception. A diamond is immediately visible. It shines. It captures attention instantly. You don't need to explain its value. It announces itself. Anyone can look at it and recognize that it is desirable. Its impact is fast, emotional, and obvious. A diamond mine, on the other hand, does not look impressive at first glance. It's buried, it's industrial, it's rough, dark, and often unattractive on the surface. You don't see its value instantly. You have to understand what it produces. You have to think long term. You have to recognize potential, not just appearance. And most people don't operate that way. So what happens is predictable. The thing that looks valuable gets treated as more valuable than the thing that actually is. The diamond draws attention. The mine gets overlooked. This creates a distortion in the marketplace, because if enough people treat diamonds as rare and exceptional, their perceived value increases even if the underlying reality doesn't fully support it. In fact, part of what gives diamonds their high price is not true scarcity, but controlled scarcity. Large quantities exist, but supply is carefully managed to maintain the illusion of rarity. The same dynamic applies here. There is a perception that extremely attractive women are extraordinarily rare, and while they are not common, they are far more numerous than people assume. In a global population of billions, even a small percentage translates into millions. The illusion of scarcity is amplified by visibility, not actual numbers. Now contrast that with the number of men who can consistently produce at a high level financially, intellectually, socially, strategically, the number of men who can build, sustain, and expand value over time while maintaining discipline and competence is significantly smaller. When you narrow it down further to men who are not only capable but also available, the number becomes even smaller. So while diamonds appear rare, diamond mines are actually rarer. And this is where behavior begins to reveal the truth. Even if people don't articulate it directly, look at patterns of selection. When it comes to long-term commitment, marriage, stability, investment, attention becomes more concentrated, preferences become more selective, and what you see is not a random distribution, it is a funnel. A large percentage of women are aiming at a relatively small percentage of men. not just for attention, but for commitment, for access to long-term value, for stability and provision. This is not theoretical. It shows up consistently in outcomes. When you look at wealth distribution, relationship patterns, and marriage statistics, the same pattern repeats. A minority of men occupy a disproportionate share of desirability when it comes to long-term selection. That is not how people behave towards something that is abundant. That is how they behave towards something that is scarce. And it exposes the underlying truth because while men may distribute their attention broadly, being relatively open in what they find attractive, women tend to concentrate their selection narrowly when it comes to commitment. This creates the illusion that men are chasing while women are choosing. But in reality, both are selecting just at different stages and under different criteria. Men may choose based on immediate attraction. Women tend to choose based on long-term value. And long-term value is not appearance. It is production. It is consistency. It is capability. This is why the idea that value depreciates versus appreciates becomes important. A diamond, no matter how stunning, does not increase its inherent value over time. In many cases, it declines. Its appeal is strongest in the present moment. It is tied to perception, to appearance, to conditions that change. A diamond mine, however, has the capacity to generate more over time. It produces, it expands, it compounds. Its value is not tied to a single moment. It unfolds across time. So when you compare the two, you are not just comparing objects, you are comparing categories. One is a liability in the economic sense, something that is consumed and loses value. The other is an asset, something that generates and increases value. And confusing the two is not just a small mistake, it's a fundamental misunderstanding of how value works. Now, none of this means that every man is the prize in every situation. Context matters. There are absolutely cases where a specific woman holds more value relative to a specific man. That happens all the time. But when you control for variables, when you compare like for like, top tier to top tier, the pattern becomes consistent. The source of value outweighs the product of value every time. And even if people don't say this out loud, their behavior reflects it. Their choices reflect it. Their long-term decisions reflect it. Because at the end of the day, when it comes to selecting not just what looks good, but what sustains, what builds, what multiplies the preference shifts, quietly but consistently. So when you step back and look at the full picture, the debate begins to dissolve. It was never really about who gets more attention. It was about who represents the source of value. A diamond can attract, impress, and be desired, but it remains a single unit of value. A diamond mine, even if overlooked at first glance, is what produces that value again and again, and over time, the difference between the two becomes impossible to ignore. This is why the confusion exists. One is immediately visible. The other requires understanding. One shines in the moment. The other builds across time. And once you see that clearly, your position in the dynamic changes. You stop measuring yourself by how much attention you receive. You start measuring yourself by what you can create, sustain, and expand. You shift from trying to be chosen to understanding what it means to be the one who selects. Because the moment you recognize yourself as the source, not just a participant, you operate differently. And whether people say it openly or not, they respond to that difference, not because of what you claim to be, but because of what you consistently produce.